2:09 a.m. The Sumy Oblast, northeastern Ukraine, 41 miles from the Russian border. A forward advisory compound, a converted farmstead surrounded by earthen berms and concertina wire, that the three-man U.S. Army Special Forces team had occupied for 11 days, coordinating with the Ukrainian brigade headquarters on counter-battery targeting procedures and artillery logistics. The night was overcast, temperature at 38 degrees Fahrenheit. A steady wind from the northeast, carrying the distant sound of artillery from the Kursk direction, 30 miles away. The compound was not a combat position. It was an advisory post. No American ground combat mission, no offensive operations. The team's role strictly defined as advise and assist in a non-fire support capacity. Their security was provided by a 12-man Ukrainian Special Operations element. Communication with the Joint Special Operations Command liaison cell at Rzeszów in Poland ran through an encrypted SATCOM terminal in the compound's main building. At 2:09 a.m., a KPA Reconnaissance General Bureau Special Operations Squad, 9 operators from the 17th Reconnaissance Brigade that had been deployed to the Kursk Oblast as part of North Korea's expanding combat commitment to Russian operations, crossed the Ukrainian border on foot. They had been moving for 6 hours, navigating through the forested terrain northeast of the compound on a route that had been planned, using imagery provided by Russian GRU assets who had identified the compound's location, its personnel composition, and its security routine through signals intelligence collection against the Ukrainian brigade's communications traffic. The squad moved to within 200 meters of the compound's perimeter at 2:09 a.m. and initiated a coordinated assault using suppressed weapons and thermobaric grenades. The 12-man Ukrainian security element was overwhelmed in 90 seconds, not through lack of courage, but through the asymmetry of a prepared night assault against a position that had received no warning. 3 Ukrainian operators were seriously injured. The KPA squad located the 3 American advisors, Army Special Forces Master Sergeant David Reyes, age 34, Warrant Officer Thomas Callahan, age 31, and Staff Sergeant Marcus Webb, age 28, extracted them from the compound's main building and began moving northeast toward the Russian border on foot with the 3 Americans as detained personnel. By 2:17 a.m., 8 minutes after the assault began, the KPA squad and 3 American detainees were moving through the forest toward Russia. The SATCOM terminal had transmitted a single automated distress signal at 2:10 a.m., 61 seconds after the assault began, triggered by a tamper sensor on the terminal housing when the KPA squad forced entry into the main building. The signal reached the JSOC liaison cell at Rzeszów at 2:11 a.m. In Pyongyang, the operation had been approved by the Reconnaissance General Bureau's commander 72 hours earlier under the authorization of the Supreme Leader. The strategic concept was explicit and had been constructed over 4 months of deliberation. The presence of American military advisors in the Sumy Oblast had been a point of continuous contention between Pyongyang and Washington. The KPA's deployed forces in the Kursk region had suffered losses from precision fires that KPA intelligence attributed correctly to targeting data developed through American advisory assistance to Ukrainian forces. The seizure of 3 American advisors would accomplish 2 objectives simultaneously. It would remove the immediate targeting advisory capability from the Ukrainian brigade, and it would give the DPRK, for the first time in its history, American military personnel in its custody, a negotiating asset of incalculable strategic value that could be leveraged to demand a halt to all American advisory presence in Ukraine, international recognition of the KPA's right to operate in the theater, and direct bilateral negotiations with Washington from a position of coercive advantage. The KPA's operational concept had been designed with a specific exploitation of American constraints. Crossing the international border into Russian territory with 3 American detainees created a situation in which any direct American military response, any rescue operation crossing into Russian territory, would be an act of war against Russia, not merely North Korea. The strategic genius of the operation, in Pyongyang's assessment, was that it placed the American response options inside Russian territory, where the political cost of military action was assumed to be prohibitive. The detainees would be moved by vehicle from the Russian border to a KPA operational compound in the Kursk region and then transported by military aircraft to Pyongyang within 18 hours. Once in Pyongyang, the negotiating dynamic would be entirely on North Korean terms. They had made 5 catastrophic mistakes. The first mistake: the distress signal transmitted at 2:10 a.m. had not been the only alert the assault triggered. Master Sergeant Reyes, in the 61 seconds between the assault's initiation and the compound's perimeter being breached, had activated his personal emergency locator beacon, a classified device carried by all American personnel operating in the forward advisory area that transmitted GPS coordinates and a personnel status code to the JSOC surveillance constellation every 30 seconds, on a frequency monitored continuously by the Special Operations Command Europe's watch floor at Stuttgart. The beacon's personnel status code transmitted by Reyes indicated captured, a code requiring immediate escalation to the 4-star level and activation of the JSOC isolated personnel response package within 15 minutes of receipt. The beacon's GPS coordinates, updating every 30 seconds, were transmitting the KPA squad's movement position in real time from the moment Reyes activated it. At 2:11 a.m., Saussure Stuttgart had the exact position of the KPA squad and its 3 American detainees, updating every 30 seconds, broadcasting from inside Reyes's boot sole. The second mistake: the KPA squad's route to the Russian border passed through 12 kilometers of forested terrain that was, at 2:09 a.m., under continuous surveillance by an MQ-9 Reaper, operating from a classified forward operating location that supported JSOC advisory team security monitoring across the northeastern Ukraine advisory zone. The MQ-9 had been on persistent orbit over the Sumy Oblast for 6 hours before the assault. Standard protocol whenever a U.S. advisory team was in residence at a forward compound. When the distress signal activated at 2:11 a.m., the MQ-9's FLI-Air operator was already repositioning the aircraft sensors toward the compound's GPS coordinates. By 2:14 a.m., 3 minutes after the signal, the MQ-9 had thermal imagery of the KPA squad moving northeast through the forest with 3 individuals whose movement profiles were consistent with persons being moved under duress. The MQ-9 maintained continuous surveillance of the squad's movement throughout their 6-kilometer transit to the border. The third mistake: the KPA squad's planned crossing point at the Russian border was a specific gap in the border fence line at a location selected from imagery that was 11 days old. What the imagery had not shown, because it was constructed after the imagery was taken, was a temporary Ukrainian border observation post established 8 days earlier, 200 meters from the planned crossing point. The post was manned by 4 Ukrainian border guards. The KPA squad's approach was detected by the post's thermal observation equipment at 2:47 a.m., when the squad was still 400 meters from the crossing point. The Ukrainian guards transmitted a contact report on their radio net at 2:48 a.m. That contact report reached the Ukrainian Brigade's Operations Center and was relayed to the JSOC liaison cell at Rzeszów at 2:51 a.m., providing a second, independent confirmation of the KPA squad's exact position and movement direction that corroborated the beacon tracking. The fourth mistake: the KPA Reconnaissance General Bureau's operational concept assumed that any American rescue operation, if one were attempted at all, would require authorization through the NATO command chain, through the Pentagon, through the National Security Council, and through diplomatic consultation with Ukraine and potentially Poland before any direct action could be authorized. The timeline for that authorization process was assessed at 6 to 12 hours. 6 to 12 hours gave the KPA squad sufficient time to cross into Russia, reach the Kursk vehicle pickup point, and place the detainees inside Russian-controlled territory beyond any practicable recovery range. What the KPA's planners had not assessed was the existence of the pre-authorized personnel recovery response package, a standing execute authority held at the Special Operations Command Europe commander level that could authorize a personnel recovery mission for American isolated personnel within 15 minutes of confirmed capture without requiring NSC or Pentagon authorization. The pre-authorized package had been developed specifically for the advisory mission environment in northeastern Ukraine, based on the recognized risk that advisory personnel operating near the Russian border could be seized by Russian-aligned forces. The authority existed precisely because the window for response was measured in minutes, not hours. At 2:19 a.m., 8 minutes after the distress signal, Saussure had issued the execute order. The fifth mistake, the one that ensured not just the recovery of the 3 Americans, but the comprehensive elimination of the KPA's Kursk operational infrastructure, was the choice of the Kursk Oblast as the KPA's operating base. The KPA's 17th Reconnaissance Brigade forward compound at Glushkovo in the Kursk region, from which the 9-man squad had staged, to which they were attempting to return with the American detainees, and which served as the command and coordination hub for all KPA Reconnaissance General Bureau operations in the Russian theater, had been geolocated by NSA Signals Intelligence Collection 14 days earlier. Its position was known. Its occupants were assessed. Its communications infrastructure had been monitored continuously. The pre-authorized response package included not just the personnel recovery mission, but a pre-planned strike against the Glushkovo compound that would execute simultaneously with the recovery, ensuring that the KPA operational infrastructure that had planned and launched the seizure could not plan or launch anything further. What happened in the next 54 minutes was the fastest personnel recovery operation across an active international border in the history of American special operations. At 2:19 a.m., the execute order reached the JSOC forward staging element at Lublin, Poland. A 48-operator Delta Force squadron and 4 MH-60M Black Hawk crews from the 161st SOAR that had been at 2-hour standby since American advisory teams deployed to the Sumy Oblast 7 weeks earlier. Specifically because the JSOC EUCOM risk assessment for advisory personnel operating near the Russian border had rated the abduction scenario as the primary threat requiring pre-positioned response capability. 2-hour standby. Execute order at 2:19 a.m. The 4 MH-60Ms were lifting from Lublin at 2:31 a.m., 12 minutes after execute, with 48 Delta operators aboard, flying southeast toward Ukraine at maximum speed. Simultaneously, 2 F-22A Raptors from the 493rd Fighter Squadron at RAF Lakenheath in the United Kingdom, which had been on 4-hour alert for exactly this threat scenario since the KPA's deployment to Kursk became confirmed 9 weeks earlier, launched at 2:22 a.m. and turned east. They would be the combat air patrol element covering the recovery operation against any Russian or KPA air response. The MQ-9 maintained continuous surveillance of the KPA squad throughout. The beacon was transmitting every 30 seconds. By 2:33 a.m., the JSOC watch floor had the squad's precise position. They were still inside Ukraine, 1.4 kilometers from the Russian border, moving at approximately 4 kilometers per hour through dense forest. At the squad's current pace, they would cross the border at approximately 3 a.m. The 4 MH-60Ms would arrive at the intercept position at approximately 3:04 a.m., 4 minutes after the border crossing. At 2:44 a.m., the JSOC watch floor transmitted an updated assessment. The KPA squad had slowed, apparently taking a rest halt at a forest clearing 1 kilometer from the border. The halt provided a window. The MH-60Ms were redirected to a landing zone in the forest, 400 meters south of the KPA squad's current position. Inside Ukraine, at a natural clearing the MQ-9's terrain analysis had identified as suitable for a 4-ship landing. The 4 MH-60Ms touched down at 3:01 a.m. in a coordinated 4-ship landing that placed all 48 operators on the ground in 11 seconds. The insertion was silent. The MH-60M's reduced acoustic signature at low power settings in the cold night air, combined with the wind direction and the forest density, meant the KPA squad's position was 400 meters upwind with approximately 35 decibels of ambient forest noise masking the aircraft. The Delta element established 2 8-man blocking positions, covering the squad's route toward the border, and a 12-man assault element that moved to within 80 meters of the KPA squad's rest halt position, using the continuous MQ-9 thermal feed transmitted in real time to each operator's wrist-mounted display. The Delta element's challenge was the 3 American detainees in physical proximity to 9 armed KPA operators in darkness in dense forest. The rules of engagement for the recovery, pre-planned, pre-briefed, and pre-rehearsed, required that the assault element achieve sufficient position advantage to simultaneously neutralize the KPA operators without risk to the detainees before any engagement commenced. The thermal feed provided the position of every individual in the rest halt to within 2 meters. The assault element required 3 minutes and 40 seconds to achieve their assault positions. At 3:09 a.m., the assault element transmitted ready to the element commander. The element commander transmitted execute at 3:09 a.m. in 14 seconds. The engagement lasted 11 seconds. 9 KPA operators. 11 seconds. The Delta element's after-action report would describe the engagement in terms that reflected the outcome. All 9 KPA operators secured or removed from the battle space in direct contact. All 3 American detainees unharmed. Master Sergeant Reyes had a laceration on his left forearm from the initial compound assault, treated on scene by the element's combat controller medic in 4 minutes. Warrant Officer Callahan and Staff Sergeant Webb were uninjured. All 3 were ambulatory and communicative. All 3 Americans were aboard the lead MH-60M at 3:16 a.m. The 4 MH-60Ms lifted from the recovery position at 3:17 a.m. and turned northwest toward Poland. They crossed back into Polish airspace at 3:44 a.m. and landed at Lublin at 3:53 a.m. Master Sergeant Reyes, Warrant Officer Callahan, and Staff Sergeant Webb walked off the helicopter at 3:53 a.m. under their own power. They were met by the SOCEUR commander on the Lublin flight line. The pre-authorized strike against the KPA 17th Reconnaissance Brigade compound at Glushkovo in the Kursk region executed at 3:11 a.m., 6 minutes before the 3 Americans were aboard their recovery aircraft. Pre-authorized to proceed on the confirmation that all 3 were in American hands and moving to the helicopters. From Ramstein Air Base in Germany, 4 F-15E Strike Eagles carrying AGM-158 JASSM cruise missiles had launched at 2:40 a.m., 19 minutes after the execute order, on strike profiles toward Glushkovo. Their assigned targets: the compound's main command building, the communications and signals intelligence facility, the vehicle and equipment compound housing the transport assets that would have moved the American detainees to the airfield, and the underground storage facility where KPA Reconnaissance General Bureau equipment and mission planning materials were assessed to be located. The JASSM salvo of 16 missiles reached Glushkovo at 3:11 a.m. in a time-on-target sequence. The command building received 4 direct impacts. The communications facility received 3. The vehicle compound received 5. The underground storage facility received 4. The JASSM's penetrating warhead configured for the subsurface target. All 4 structures were assessed as permanently inoperable. 14 KPA Reconnaissance General Bureau personnel assessed as present in the compound at the time of the strike were removed from the operational picture. From RAF Fairford in the United Kingdom, 2 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers that had launched at midnight, pre-positioned for exactly this contingency, were inbound to their secondary target. The KPA 17th Reconnaissance Brigade's main support facility at Zheleznogorsk in the Kursk Oblast, 41 miles from Glushkovo, which served as the logistics hub, personnel replacement center, and secure communications relay for all KPA Reconnaissance General Bureau operations in the Russian theater. The facility received 8 GBU-31JDAMs at 3:44 a.m. The barracks complex, the logistics warehouse, the communications relay building, and the vehicle maintenance facility were all assessed as rendered inoperable. The 2 F-22O as covering the operation detected zero Russian or KPA air response throughout. Both returned to Lakenheath at 6:30 a.m. The final accounting, documented by JSOC and SOCEUR over the subsequent 48 hours. American advisory personnel seized 3. American advisory personnel recovered unharmed or with minor treatable injuries. 3. Time from distress signal to all 3 Americans aboard recovery aircraft, 1 hour, 5 minutes. Time from execute order to recovery, 54 minutes. KPA operators who conducted the seizure, 9. KPA operators removed from the battle space or secured, 9. KPA operators who reached Russian territory with any American detainee, 0. KPA 17th Reconnaissance Brigade. Glushkovo Command Compound, all 4 structures permanently inoperable. KPA personnel removed from operational picture in the Glushkovo strike. 14. Zheleznogorsk Support Facility, all 4 structures rendered inoperable. Total: KPA Reconnaissance General Bureau facilities and infrastructure removed from the Kursk theater operational picture 8. Ukrainian security personnel injured in the initial compound assault. 3. All received medical treatment and all survived. American service members having sustained any injury beyond Master Sergeant Reyes's laceration, 0. American aircraft lost, 0. In Pyongyang, the Reconnaissance General Bureau's commander received his damage assessment at 7 a.m. The operation that was supposed to produce 3 American military personnel in DPRK custody, the most consequential negotiating leverage North Korea had ever attempted to acquire, had produced 9 KPA operators removed from the battle space, 14 personnel removed at Glushkovo, an entire forward compound destroyed, a logistics hub in Zheleznogorsk rendered inoperable, and 3 Americans who were at that moment eating breakfast at the Lublin base cafeteria. The detainees were home. The KPA infrastructure in Kursk was rubble. This is what happens when you send a 9-man special operations squad across an international border to seize American advisory personnel and calculate that the political complexity of the response will give you 6 to 12 hours before anyone acts. When the execute order reaches the recovery force 8 minutes after the distress signal. This is what happens when your detainees are tracked in real time by a beacon transmitting from inside a boot sole every 30 seconds. And the operator sent to recover them had been pre-positioned at 2-hour standby for exactly this mission since the week your brigade arrived in Kursk. Master Sergeant Reyes, Warrant Officer Callahan, and Staff Sergeant Webb are home. They were never really gone.